Hi, this is Sharon Cluck with Mind of Messiah Ministries. And I'm wondering if you're a parent praying for an adult child. I think there's millions and millions of us because recently I joined a Facebook group and it's called Moms Praying for Adult Children. Now, I don't sponsor this group, but I see women on this group every day who are heartbroken, heartsick, pining after their children. I have history in deliverance, and I'm a psych certified nurse. I'm a counselor in inner healing, and I have this YouTube channel, Sharon Cluck, Cluck, and it's filled with teachings on spiritual warfare, which you need when you are praying for those adult children, because there's two kingdoms, and the kingdom of darkness is trying to claim your kids, and the kingdom of light wants them too. Yeshua, Jesus, paid the price for their salvation, and he is with you in getting them to return to him. He loves them more than you do. So when I joined this, I did it because I've already I've walked this whole walk already. I'm with these moms in this. I've learned many lessons traveling the same road, and none of us are alone in this. So as I read 2 Samuel this week, and I read the whole book in a couple of days, I realized how dysfunctional King David's family was. He had one son who raped his sister. And then he refused to have anything to do with her. And he left her just pining away, extreme depression, destitute for years, where she went and hid out in her brother Absalom's house for years. So a couple years passed by while Absalom was trying to figure out how he's going to kill his brother Ammon. And eventually he does that. So now David's got one son who's a murderer, one son who's a rapist, and a daughter who is disturbed mentally and emotionally, spiritually, because she's been raped and feels like she's useless. She's taken off the garments of the king's daughter, and he's got this terribly dysfunctional family. Now, on top of that, Absalom, in a number of years later, decides that he is going to overthrow the kingdom. But before he does that, he runs away after he kills his brother Ammon, and he's gone for 2 years. For 2 years, he doesn't talk to his father or his father to him. Does that sound familiar to you? How many of you have kids that won't even talk to you, won't answer a text, won't return a phone call, don't talk to you on Facebook, you have no connection with them? Some of you don't even know where your kids are. So before David, back in reconciliation with Absalom, Absalom then ultimately tries to overthrow his father and even take his own father's life. He wants the kingdom. If any of that sounds familiar to you, on this prayer group that I'm not part of, I hear heartbreaking stories every single day. Parents are pining after the kids, or maybe they're just so hurt that they don't know what to do or where to go. A number of years ago, the Lord gave me a vision because I was praying for my kids too. And I put that vision on the front of this book. This is called Letting Them Go, Trusting God to Catch Them. And you can see two hands and my 4 kids falling into the hands of God. So what God told me at that time is he said, Sharon, I have all of your kids in my hand. I own them. They've all been born again. They all belong to me, but they're not all living for me. But every time I loosen my grip, even the slightest, they begin to fall down. And what do? You come around and you catch them. You catch them. You bail them out of everything. You bail them out financially. You bail them out emotionally. You're a fixer, and you gotta stop that. How can they ever call out to me unless you get out of the way? And so he prompted me to write this book. And it actually took me 2 or 3 years to get it finished. But this is what he said. Sharon, if I hold your kids in my hands and I loosen the grip and they begin to fall and nobody rescues them, then I will come around like this and I will catch them in the palms of my hand. God will catch your kids. But we gotta let go of them. We gotta quit trying to be God to our adult children. How do they ever build a relationship with God themselves if we keep trying to be God to them? So my oldest daughter married a man who was in the ministry, and we thought that was a marriage made in heaven. So I want to just tell you briefly why I wrote this book. Instead, it was a marriage from hell. He owned my daughter, and he didn't let us see her for over 10 years. I prayed for 15 years for her to return. Well, she did, but she returned in God's timing and not mine. Not my way, but his way. And he told me that clearly. All that's in this book. She's now in ministry with us, and we are a team again. It was a long, hard road to climb, but I got through it with lots of instructions from the Lord. So both of my sons have at one time or the other stepped out of my life temporarily. And I did like many others did in the beginning. I laid on the floor and I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried over my daughter. And God finally told me, just get up off the floor and get on with your life. And I had one other daughter who died at the age of 38, and I never even knew why she died. I never got to see her body after she died, and so I had a really difficult time with closure. And she was my one child who never found any fault with me. Of all the kids to be taken out of my life or to leave this earth. Anyway, I've had to work a long time with my children, and so that's why I have gone in through inner healing. I've had to work with people that have multiple personalities. I've had to deal with aches and pains of my own, and as I got healed, all of that shows up in this book. So God instructed me to write this book, and it's called Letting Them Go, Trusting God to Catch Them. It's available on Amazon. It's under Sharon Cluck, C-L-U-C-K. And the name of the book, Letting Them Go, Trusting God to Catch Them. So nearly everyone who has read this book has had their life dramatically changed for the better. It's written in a counseling format with lots of questions for the readers to consider. And when you finish reading this book, you will have had the equivalent of months of counseling. Here's the big if you do the hard work. This book should have been written with a workbook, and I didn't do that. So all the questions are in the book, but you need to take a tablet and sit down and consider them. I recently had a lady tell me how her whole family had been reconciled after she went through this book. She went through a recent death of her mother, and the whole family was in an uproar with the conflict she'd had with her mother. And after reading this book and working through all the questions, she was able to reconcile with her brothers and sisters, reconcile with her children, and be satisfied with the things that she had unfinished with her mother. So get you a pad and paper. Be truthful with yourself before God. Answer all the questions in this book, and you're going to learn much about yourself and about your children. So if you're hurting, a worried parent, you need this book. You need it. It's only $16.95 plus shipping, and that's a really small price to change your entire life. So what would you do to have peace back in your family? What would you do to have your kids back in your life? Do yourself a favor. Pick up this book, learn from others who've already gone before you, and learn that you're not alone. So I thank you for listening. I wrote this book because God told me to, because I kept running into other parents with the same situations, and they never knew how to say no, and they never knew why they said no, and they never had the backing of God in their life because they didn't know how to get it. Pick up the book. Do yourself a favor. Love yourself enough and your family enough to get some help. I thank you for listening. I pray you get the book and help you through this very hard time in your life and season with your family. God bless you, and see you next time.